and that is I've been very frustrated over how we pay for a multi-year reauthorization, and some of my colleagues have talked about supporting a concept of shifting the federal program back to the states by cutting the federal user fees, some of them 15 cents, some of them whatever the amounts, and then letting the states pick up the tab. Now, if such a thing were to become a reality, Idaho would have to raise its state gas tax by 25 cents, West Virginia by 32 cents. Your state, Mr. Bracera of Utah, would be 19 cents. You would have to increase this. And Montana, 44 cents. So there was a reason for this. And I often say one of the few things that really does work in government is this system. And this is coming from a conservative. So I often said, and I remember on the Senate floor when we had our 27-month bill, that the conservative position is to go ahead and do an authorization bill. Number one, you get all the reform, streamlining, and all that stuff. And number two, if you don't do that, it's going to cost about 30% off the top. And that is not the conservative position. Now, when you talk about devolution, as several are suggesting, I'm probably the right one to talk about this because, and my colleagues don't know this, but 25 years ago, Connie Mack from Florida and Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma were the fathers of devolution. And we thought, oh, that was so much fun on the stump to talk about how go back to Oklahoma, why make an unnecessary trip of our dollars in Oklahoma to Washington and back, until we realized how it didn't work. And obviously, it was more fun to be for it than against it, but nonetheless, that's happening. Well, you know, interstate commerce doesn't stop at state boundaries. No state is an island. And I've read extensively on Eisenhower. I've always been a great admirer of his. My other committee is Armed Services Committee, you know, he used to say it's just as much about national defense as it is interstate commerce. Interstate connectivity and national defense access are equally important. So I would just say that this is, in my position, what I'm going to do is have only one question. One question. We're going to start with you, Mr. Bracera, and we're going to work down. Now, if we get to 5 minutes, we'll cut me off, go to the rest of them, and then we'll continue. So that'll give you more time to think about this. All right? Mr. Bracera, do you agree with me? What do you think?
Mr. Chairman, I would say devolve the federal...
You need your speaker.
Mr. Chairman, I would say the answer of whether or not to devolve the federal program is if you believe there's no federal purpose in transportation. I believe that there's a strong purpose in our nation's transportation system and having a strong federal role. Companies such as, based in Oklahoma, Advanced Pierre Food Services, they produce their products, but they depend on a vibrant, well-functioning, safe transportation system in every state of this country. For our country to continue to be successful and to be an economic leader, we need a strong federal transportation system.
That's good. One follow-up question on that. What if a state, if you went through this concept and a state decided that they were not going to increase their taxes? Your state of Utah, for example. What would happen to the national system?
Yes, we depend on the federal program to maintain and operate our transportation system. We have a strong state system. Our federal program constitutes just under 25% of our program, but the federal program is what we maintain and preserve the state's transportation system on. So you would see roads continue to deteriorate, bridges to continue to deteriorate. So that federal role is critical to the state of Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Bracera. Mr. Heminger.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly do agree with you. There's another quotation I'm recalling from President Eisenhower when he submitted his interstate highway bill to the Congress. He noted that activities like transportation and communications are things that knit our country together. And I think he said without that, we would be a mere alliance of many separate parts. And I think we're called the United States of America for a reason. And if you think the federal government's done with transportation, I suppose you could devolve the program. I come from a state that has probably the best chance of standing on its own 2 feet. We're a nation state by any stretch or measure, but there are jobs that even we can't do. And Senator Boxer mentioned the import of goods and the flow of commerce coming into our ports. That's not just a California issue, that's a national issue. I would finally mention one thing that doesn't often get talked about in devolution. If you were to head down that path, the last time I checked, I think it's something like 30 or more states have restrictions in their state constitutions that would prohibit them from using gas tax money on public transit. And that's a pretty big pill to swallow in states around the country where we rely on federal aid to public transit.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to cut my time off now, and we'll come back for the three of you on the same issue. Senator Boxer.